The sun on Loria 7 was beginning to set when the convoy rolled across Lorien Ridge. The sky shifted from blue to gold, and long shadows stretched over the rocky ground. Kayla Ryn sat near the window of the transport shuttle, watching the colors change with a soft smile. She had been away from home for months, studying in the capital, and she was excited to see her mother again. Everything felt peaceful, calm, and safe. She never imagined how quickly that peace would break. The convoy was made up of 3 civilian shuttles, 2 cargo carriers, and a pair of light security bikes. It wasn't a dangerous route, at least according to the guides. But rumors had spread lately, rumors of raiders sighted along the ridge. Kayla had tried not to think about them. She reminded herself that Loria 7 was a mostly stable world. She told herself that the guards would handle anything that happened. She believed it right up until the moment she heard the first explosion. At first, she thought a rock had hit the side of the transport. But then the second blast came, louder and closer, and everyone in the shuttle screamed. The pilot shouted something, but the words were drowned out as the windows flashed red. Outside, fire erupted across the ridge. Kayla's heart pounded. Through the window, she saw one of the cargo carriers burning. Figures moved through the smoke, tall shapes with armor made of bone plates. Their eyes glowed a dull yellow in the shadows. The Vorka dreadpacks had found them. The pilot tried to take the shuttle up, but a heavy net launched from the ridge wrapped around the craft, dragging it down. The engine sputtered and died. Kayla was thrown forward as the shuttle crashed against the rocky ground. The lights flickered. Everyone sat frozen for a long second before the side door was torn open. The Vorka raiders stormed in, shouting in their harsh, guttural voices. They carried shock poles and jagged rifles. Panic spread instantly. Some passengers tried to hide, others tried to run. But the raiders moved too quickly. Kayla felt a hand grab her wrist and yank her up. She tried to pull away, but the raider was stronger and dragged her into the open. The ridge was filled with chaos. Flames from the burning carrier lit up the scene. Civilians were being pulled into a group, forced to kneel with their hands behind their heads. The Vorka shouted orders at each other, laughing as they pushed people around. Kayla stumbled as she was shoved toward the kneeling crowd. Dust stuck to her face, and her breath came quick and uneven. She tried to steady herself, but fear made her whole body shake. A Vorka captain with markings carved across his chest strode in front of the captives. He scanned them with a slow, hungry gaze. "Ransom," he growled. "You will bring profit." Kayla tried to keep her eyes down. Her heart hammered louder with each passing second. She wondered if her mother would ever know what happened. She wondered if rescue would come in time, or if rescue would come at all. Far above Lorien Ridge, a fractured distress beacon drifted through the airwaves. The convoy's first warning signal had been cut off by jamming tech, but a tiny piece slipped through before the interference took hold. It wasn't much, just a scrambled location ping and a few broken words. But it was enough for a nearby patrol to notice. A human rapid response squad was moving along the outer perimeter of the region when the alert chimed in their helmets. Sergeant Bree Anders raised a hand, signaling the team to halt. She tapped her wrist display, replaying the signal. Static covered most of the transmission, but Bree caught 2 things clearly: Lorien Ridge and attack. She frowned. Convoys shouldn't have been anywhere near danger that day. But Bree didn't ignore warnings, not even vague ones. She turned to her squad, a small group of armored humans with steady eyes and weapons ready. "We're moving in," she said calmly. "Assume possible civilians. No time to waste." Her team didn't argue. Humans never hesitated when lives were on the line. They sped toward the ridge on armored bikes, their engines humming softly. As they approached the area, Bree lifted her visor and narrowed her eyes. Smoke curled into the sky. Fire glinted off metal. That was all she needed to see. "We go in fast," she said over the comm. "Minimal noise, until we can assess their numbers. Watch each other's backs." The squad moved like shadows, weaving through rock formations until they reached the edge of the ridge. From their vantage point, they saw the entire scene. Burning vehicles, terrified civilians, and the Vorka dreadpacks circling them like predators. Bree's jaw tightened. The Vorka were known for being ruthless. They didn't leave survivors unless there was profit in it. Bree turned to her team. "We break the line first, pull their attention, and sweep the civilians to cover on the west side. We'll create an opening for extraction. Everyone clear?" Comms clicked in agreement. Below, Kayla tried to keep her breathing quiet. The Vorka captain barked something about moving the captives to the canyon fortress before nightfall. Several raiders began herding people into a rough formation. Kayla's legs felt weak. She didn't know if she could stand much longer. She felt a prick of tears at the corner of her eyes, but she blinked them away. Crying wouldn't help. A sudden explosion tore open the side of the ridge. The ground trembled, and dust shot into the air. The Vorka spun in confusion. Another blast erupted behind them. Then, another. The raiders snarled and lifted their weapons just as shadowy shapes rushed in from the smoke. Humans. Kayla had never seen humans in person before. She had heard stories that they were fast, driven, and strangely brave compared to other species. They moved like streaks of motion, weaving through the battlefield with sharp precision. Their armor was scratched and worn, but they carried themselves like nothing could slow them down. Sergeant Bree led the charge. She sprinted forward, sliding behind a broken transport, firing controlled bursts to pin the raiders down. Her team followed her lead, pushing the Vorka back step by step. Civilians screamed and ducked as stray shots hit the ground around them. Bree assessed the situation in seconds. She spotted the kneeling group of captives and the raiders surrounding them. She saw one raider grab a young girl by the arm, Kayla, and begin dragging her away toward the cliffs. Bree cursed under her breath and signaled two of her team members to keep suppressing fire. "I'm going for the one being taken," she called out. She sprinted across the open ground without hesitation. Kayla stumbled as the raider pulled her harder. She tried to twist free, but the grip only tightened. The raider growled, annoyed by her resistance, and shoved her ahead. Kayla fell to her knees, her palms scraping against the rock. She looked back, her eyes wide with fear. The raider raised his weapon. Before he could fire, Bree crashed into him from the side, knocking him off balance. Kayla flinched, expecting violence, but Bree's movements were controlled and efficient. With a swift strike of her rifle's stock, she disarmed the raider and sent him sprawling. The raider tried to rise, but Bree planted her boot on his chest and pinned him down. "Stay down," she ordered. The raider hissed but didn't move. Bree turned to Kayla. "Are you hurt?" Kayla shook her head, too shocked to speak at first. She had never seen anyone move like that. She had never heard a voice so steady in the middle of chaos. Bree offered her a hand. "Come on. I'm here to get you out." Kayla took the hand, feeling a rush of relief. Bree's grip was strong and warm through the armored glove. For the first time since the attack began, Kayla felt hope. They ran together toward the safer side of the ridge. Blaster fire echoed behind them, and the ridgeline shook again as explosives detonated. The Vorka were fighting back harder now, angry at being surprised by such a small human team. Kayla stumbled once more, and Bree steadied her quickly. "Keep going," Bree said, guiding her behind a large rock formation where a few other civilians were being protected by human soldiers. The fight raged on, growing more desperate as the raiders tried to regroup. Bree didn't stop. She rushed back into the fray again and again, pulling civilians to safety, covering her team, pushing forward without pause. Kayla watched her from the hiding spot, awe mixing with fear and admiration. She had heard stories about the way humans fought, but this was different. This was real. Humans didn't run from danger. They ran toward it. Within minutes, the raiders began to fall back, retreating toward the canyon. The human squad held their ground, forcing them to abandon the captives and escape into the rocks. As the last raider disappeared into the shadows, silence slowly returned to Lorien Ridge. Kayla's legs finally gave out. She sat on the ground, breathing hard, staring at the humans who had appeared out of nowhere to save them. Her eyes searched until she saw Bree again, helmet cracked, armor scorched, but standing tall. Kayla felt something shift inside her. Gratitude, amazement, and something deeper she didn't yet understand. She whispered under her breath, barely audible, "Humans, you're incredible." Kayla sat on a flat rock while the human squad checked the area for danger. The ground was still warm from the explosions, and smoke drifted lazily through the air. The sky above Lorien Ridge had darkened, turning the golden sunset into a gloomy red haze. Even after the raiders had retreated, the air carried tension, as if danger could return at any moment. Bree Anders stood a short distance away, speaking quietly through her comm as she observed the ridge with sharp eyes. Her armor was scratched, and a crack ran across her left shoulder plate, but she stood straight and steady, as if nothing could unsettle her. Kayla watched her, unable to pull her gaze away. She felt a heavy mix of relief and wonder. Bree had pulled her from the very hands of a raider, risking her own safety without hesitation. Kayla had never experienced anything like that before. Nearby, civilians whispered among themselves, their voices shaky but hopeful. Some were injured, but human medics were already treating them with calm care. Kayla hugged her knees, still trying to process everything that had happened. She had always believed humans were brave, but today she had seen something beyond bravery, something fierce and rare. Bree walked over to her at last. "You should drink some water," she said gently. "Your body's still in shock." Kayla nodded and took the canteen Bree offered. Her hands trembled so badly, she had to grip it with both hands. Bree crouched down to her level, her face visible now that the visor was lifted. She had dark hair tied back and steady eyes that seemed to read everything at once. "You did well," Bree told her. "You followed when I told you to. That helped keep you safe." Kayla managed a weak smile. I tried. But I was so scared. There's nothing wrong with being scared," Bree said. "Courage doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you move even when your fear is shouting." Kayla let the words sink in. They felt heavier than she expected. A soldier jogged toward them and saluted Bree. "Sergeant, we've checked the transports. 2 are too damaged to use. We still have the small evac shuttle, but it won't fit everyone. Number 6. Number 6. Bree frowned. "And the raiders? They'll regroup soon. The canyon fortress is only a few kilometers away. We should assume they're planning a counterattack." Bree nodded slowly. "Understood. Start preparing the evac route. We'll move the civilians in waves." Kayla felt a pit form in her stomach. "We have to stay here longer?" "Only for a little while," Bree said calmly. "We'll get all of you home. But what if the raiders come back?" "They will," Bree answered honestly. She didn't sugarcoat it. "But we'll hold them off." The confidence in her voice made Kayla's fear ease, even if only a little. She watched Bree rise and join her team again, issuing quiet orders, moving with certainty despite the danger surrounding them. Time passed slowly. The wind picked up across the ridge, carrying dust through the air. Civilians were moved toward a protective circle of rocks, while the human soldiers took defensive positions. Kayla stayed close to the group but couldn't stop glancing toward Bree, who paced along the perimeter, checking angles and planning their next move. Soon, the first wave of civilians was loaded into the small evac shuttle. Kayla wasn't part of that group. She knew the second wave would take her, along with the remaining civilians. But a strange worry tugged at her. The raiders wouldn't wait long. They would want revenge. And Bree's squad was so small, Too small, it seemed, to stand against the entire Vorka pack again. As the evac shuttle lifted with a loud hum, Bree knelt beside a portable map projector. Holographic terrain lines shimmered above it. She pointed to a path that wound through the rocks. "We'll move the second group through here," she said. "It's narrow, which means the Vorka can't surround us." Her team nodded. They trusted her completely. Kayla walked closer, listening carefully even though she didn't understand half the tactical language. She just wanted to be near Bree, wanted to feel that sense of safety again. When Bree noticed her, she gave a faint smile. "Don't worry," Bree said. "We've faced worse odds." Kayla opened her mouth to reply, but before she could speak, the ground trembled slightly. A low rumbling echoed across the ridge. Bree's face hardened instantly. She stood up, scanning the horizon. The other soldiers gripped their weapons. The rumbling grew louder. Dust shook off the cliff walls. "They're coming," one soldier murmured. Kayla's breath caught. She followed Bree's gaze toward the canyon mouth. In the shadows, faint yellow lights blinked Vorka helmets. Bree raised her voice just enough for her squad to hear. She turned to Kayla. "Stay behind the rocks, no matter what." Kayla nodded, though her legs felt weak. The Vorka emerged like a wave larger in number than before, armed with heavier weapons. They roared their battle cries as they advanced. The human squad opened fire. Their shots measured and precise. The ridge lit up with flashes of energy. Kayla ducked behind the rocks with the others. But she peeked out just enough to see Bree moving across the battlefield. The sergeant fired from cover, sprinted to a better angle, then covered her team members, guiding their positions with quick hand signals. Even under heavy fire, she moved with focus, as if fear had no power over her. The raiders pushed hard, sending shock bolts that cracked the ground near the humans. One bolt struck close to Bree. She stumbled, but recovered instantly, returning fire with stunning accuracy. A sharp cry from nearby made Kayla turn. A civilian had panicked and tried to run out into the open, away from the rocks. Kayla felt her stomach drop as a Vorka aimed at him. Before she could scream, Bree broke cover and dashed forward. Time seemed to slow as she slid across the ground, grabbed the civilian by the arm, and pulled him back behind the rocks, just in time. A blast hit the place she had stood less than a second earlier. Kayla's heart pounded painfully. Bree didn't even pause to rest. She pushed the frightened civilian into a protected corner. "Stay here," Bree ordered, then sprang back into the fight. Kayla had never seen anything like it. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded by chaos. Yet they didn't fall back. They didn't give up. They held the ridge with sheer determination. Minutes passed like hours. The Vorka pressed forward again, trying to overwhelm the human line. A group of raiders attempted to flank the civilians from the right. Bree spotted them instantly. "On me," she called to two soldiers. They followed without hesitation as Bree charged toward the flank. The clash was fierce. Bree ducked beneath a swing from a raider's shock pole and struck back with the butt of her rifle, knocking the weapon from his hands. She moved with practiced precision, her motions sharp and controlled. One of the raiders managed to land a hit on her shoulder, knocking her to the ground. Kayla gasped loudly, her hands covering her mouth. Bree rolled, avoiding a second strike, then pushed herself back up despite the pain. She countered with a fast strike that sent the raider sprawling. The humans finally broke the flank. The raiders fell back slightly, regrouping. The moment there was even a brief pause, Bree's voice came through the comm. "Second evac wave move." The soldiers began directing civilians into formation. Hearts racing, they followed the narrow path Bree had planned earlier. Kayla stayed close to the group, but she couldn't help turning back to look for Bree. The sergeant was covering their retreat, firing precise bursts to keep the raiders at bay. Her movements were slower now, showing she was tired, but she didn't stop. A loud crack split the air as one of the ridge walls shook. Stones tumbled down the slope. Kayla stumbled, but a soldier caught her arm. "Keep moving," he yelled. But Kayla looked back again and saw Bree turn sharply as a new group of raiders appeared on the side trail, cutting off her path to her squad. Bree was alone. Kayla's breath caught. Fear pressed hard against her chest. She felt a helpless ache rise inside her as she watched the sergeant fight off the raiders with dwindling energy. Bree was skilled, but the number of enemies growing around her made Kayla's hands shake in terror. A soldier grabbed Kayla's arm firmly. "We have to go. She'll catch up." Kayla wanted to argue, wanted to run to Bree, but she knew she couldn't. She was a civilian. She had no weapon, no armor, no training. She would only make things worse. Her throat tightened painfully, and she let herself be pulled away with the group. As they moved through the narrow path, blaster fire echoed behind them. Kayla kept turning her head, hoping, praying to see Bree following. But the ridge grew darker as they got farther away. At last, they reached the extraction point where the second evac shuttle waited. The soldiers began guiding them inside quickly. Kayla stepped into the shuttle, but she couldn't sit. She couldn't breathe properly. She stared out at the path behind them, waiting for Bree. Every second felt like a wound. Then, finally, a figure appeared in the distance. Bree, limping slightly, but still standing, still fighting, still refusing to fall. The soldiers on the shuttle cheered. Kayla felt tears fill her eyes. Bree reached the shuttle ramp just as the engines warmed. Her armor was scorched. A long mark cut across her side, but her expression was steady. She looked at Kayla for a brief moment, just a second, and gave a small nod, as if to say, "I told you, I'd get you all out." Kayla felt her chest tighten with overwhelming emotion. The shuttle doors closed, sealing them inside. As the engines lifted them away from Lorien Ridge, Kayla whispered to herself again, voice trembling but full of awe. "Humans. They never give up." The evac shuttle shook gently as it flew across the sky, leaving Lorien Ridge behind. The engines hummed softly, filling the cabin with a steady vibration. Civilians sat close together, wrapped in blankets, whispering quietly or staring at the floor in shock. The air felt heavy with exhaustion, but also with relief. They were alive. They had escaped. Kayla sat near the window, still breathing unevenly. The events of the day replayed in her mind again and again. The explosions, the fear, the raiders, and most of all, Bree. Every moment seemed carved into her memory. She kept glancing toward the back of the shuttle, where Bree sat with her helmet off, a medic tending to the cut along her side. Bree noticed Kayla looking and managed a small smile. She lifted a hand to show she was all right. Kayla nodded quickly, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Even injured, Bree tried to reassure others. The medic pulled away after finishing the bandage. "You'll need proper treatment when we land," he said. Bree shrugged slightly. "I've had worse." Kayla didn't know whether to laugh or cry at that. She turned her attention back to the window as the capital city came into view. Towering buildings shone in the distance, and air traffic lights blinked across the sky. Kayla's heart tightened. Somewhere down there, her mother waited, worried, scared, and probably imagining the worst. The shuttle descended slowly toward the main landing platform. People on the ground pointed upward, watching as the damaged shuttle approached. Emergency teams gathered, ready to receive civilians. Kayla pressed her hand against the window, feeling her breath catch in her throat. As soon as the shuttle touched down, the doors opened. Warm air rushed inside. The noise of the city and the voices of waiting families filled the landing zone. Kayla stood quickly, gripping the edge of a seat to steady her trembling legs. People rushed forward as civilians began to step out. Cries of joy echoed through the air. Someone shouted a name. Someone else ran into open arms. The atmosphere was full of relief and emotion. But Kayla saw only one person in the crowd. Her mother. Marin Rin stood near the front line, her hands over her mouth, tears shining in her eyes. The moment Kayla's gaze met hers, something inside Kayla broke loose. She ran. Her feet moved faster than she thought they could. She pushed past a few people, almost stumbled, then kept going. "Mom!" she cried, her voice shaking. Marin ran toward her at the same time, and when they reached each other, she pulled Kayla into a tight embrace. Kayla clung to her mother, as if she might fall apart otherwise. She felt the familiar warmth, the comforting smell, and suddenly she was crying hard into her mother's shoulder. Everything she had been holding inside, fear, exhaustion, shock, poured out at once. "I'm home," Kayla whispered through her tears. "Mom, I'm home. He saved me." Marin held her even tighter. "You're safe. Thank the stars. You're safe. I was so scared. I thought I lost you." Her voice cracked with emotion. "Iman Lam. Ender. Iman Lam. Iman Lam. Iman Lam. Iman Lam. Iman Lam. I was not Duning." Kayla cried harder. For the first time since the attack, she felt completely safe, completely loved. Her mother gently cupped her face, wiping away a few tears, and looked at her closely to make sure she wasn't injured. "I'm okay," Kayla said shakily. "Really, because of him." She turned slightly and pointed toward the shuttle. Marin followed her gaze. Bree was stepping out of the shuttle with the help of a soldier. Her armor was dented, her uniform stained with dust and smoke, but she moved with quiet dignity. Even injured, she walked as if she didn't want to worry anyone. Kayla let go of her mother and motioned for her to follow. They walked toward Bree, who paused when she saw them approaching. Bree straightened automatically, as if preparing for duty. "Sergeant Bree Anders?" Marin asked softly. Bree nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Marin didn't wait for another word. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Bree in a sudden, desperate hug. Bree froze, surprised, then carefully returned the embrace. "Thank you," Marin whispered. "Thank you for bringing my daughter back to me. Thank you for not letting anything happen to her." Bree swallowed, a little caught off guard. "It was my job," she said gently, "but I'm glad she's safe." "No," Marin said, pulling back enough to look Bree in the eyes. "It was more than a job." Kayla stepped beside her mother. She couldn't stop staring at Bree, still feeling a deep emotion she didn't quite have a name for. Bree looked at her, and the edges of her tired smile softened. "You made it. You saved me," Kayla whispered. "I'll never forget it." Bree shook her head lightly. "You were brave. I only guided you." Kayla felt another wave of emotion rise within her. She remembered the moment Bree had pulled her out of danger, the way Bree had refused to leave any civilian behind, the way she had fought even when injured. She had seen strength, courage, and kindness all at once. It changed something inside her. "I want to be strong like you," Kayla said without thinking. Bree blinked, surprised. "You already are." Kayla felt her face warm, but the words touched her deeply. Before she could say anything more, officials and medical staff approached Bree, thanking her for the rescue and urging her to move to the medical center for full treatment. Bree tried to refuse at first, but a stern look from the medic made her sigh and agree. Kayla stepped aside as Bree was guided toward a transport vehicle. She didn't want her to leave, not so soon. Her heart felt tight again, but this time in a different way, a feeling she didn't have time to understand. Marin placed a hand on Kayla's shoulder. "You should rest, sweetheart." Kayla shook her head slightly. "Mom, can we go to the medical center later? I want to check on her." Marin smiled gently. "Of course we can." Hours passed, and Kayla finally managed to calm down enough to breathe normally again. She took a shower, changed into clean clothes, and forced herself to eat something, but her thoughts kept returning to Bree. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the sergeant fighting on the ridge, protecting strangers with everything she had. When Marin said it was time to visit the medical center, Kayla felt her heart beat faster. The building was large, with bright lights and clean hallways. Soldiers and civilians moved through it, most of them injured from the recent events. Kayla walked beside her mother until they reached the room number they were given. She hesitated at the door. Marin squeezed her hand. "Go on." Kayla pushed the door open slowly. Bree was sitting up in the bed, her arm bandaged and her side wrapped in a support brace. Her damaged armor rested on a nearby table. When she looked up and saw Kayla, her face warmed with a gentle smile. "You made it," Bree said softly. "And..." Kayla stepped inside, her throat tightening. I'm fine," Bree said. "Just need rest. Nothing serious." Kayla's eyes moved to the bandages, and she frowned. "You got hurt because of us." "I got hurt because I was doing what I had to do," Bree replied calmly. "Civilians come first. Always." Kayla sat on the chair beside her bed. "Thank you again. For everything." Bree shook her head. "You don't need to thank me." "I do," Kayla insisted. "You risked your life for me. For all of us." Bree looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "I didn't want anyone to lose someone they loved today." Kayla felt tears threaten again, but she blinked them away. She didn't want to cry in front of Bree. She wanted to be strong. Marin walked in quietly after a moment and greeted Bree with warm gratitude. The three of them talked for a while about the attack, the rescue, and the future steps for the civilians. Kayla stayed close, watching Bree with quiet admiration. Eventually, a nurse came to check Bree's vitals, and Marin gently nudged Kayla toward the door. "We should let her rest," Marin whispered. Kayla nodded reluctantly. Before leaving, she turned to Bree one last time. "Will I see you again?" she asked softly. Bree paused for a second, her eyes meeting Kayla's. Kayla's heart lifted. She followed her mother out of the room, feeling lighter than she had since the attack. The hallways were bright and peaceful, a complete contrast to the terror of Lorien Ridge. As she walked, she realized something important, something she couldn't deny. Humans weren't just brave. They were extraordinary. And Sergeant Bree Anders. She was the reason Kayla was alive. The reason she was reunited with her mother. The reason hope still filled her heart. As they stepped outside into the cool night air, Kayla whispered the truth she now believed with all her heart. Humans, they really are incredible.